The Tales of series mobile ventures have mostly been mixed, especially considering in its recent times with 2 of their games ending their services not even 2 years in its lifespan. In Japan, a lot of those mobile titles, especially older ones, were able to strive, seeing a mean average of 4 years before shutting down. For the West, however, that average for Tales titles on mobile goes down to 1 year. A stark difference, and explains a lot as to why a lot of players here in the West don't have a fondness of Tales games on mobile phones. But statistics aside, one of said mobile games had at least lasted long enough to present players in the West with a story that includes an ending and an enjoyable gameplay experience. That game being Tales of Link. Tales of Link would be the first time a Tales game was released dedicatedly on smartphones worldwide, and not like other past titles that can be accessed through your phone via a browser extension. This of itself is significant, as most Tales of games released on mobile was mainly released in Japan. For some fans, it was their first ever Tales game, and for others, it was another way to enjoy the series on the go. Tales of Link had an original story, but incorporated crossover characters into this world building, making it a crossover title. Recently, I found myself wanting to jump back into Tales of Link since I myself wasn't able to finish through the main storyline when the servers were online. Unfortunately, I was distracted with the side quests and the events, and let it be known there was a lot of side quests and a lot of events. So I watched through the story, the events, and did some research on its development within available resources and materials online and in Japanese magazines. Reading about Tales of Link's development was interesting, so in this video we'll be compiling all that information together. Potential spoiler warnings, but with that said, let's link up and get into this. Tales of Link was helmed by Bandai Namco alongside tech, gaming, and lifestyle company Akatsuki Inc. The game puts the player into the lens of the Great Savior, an amnesiac being that was given the title from Lippy, a sprite from the heavens sent to find the Great Savior by the goddess Leone, alongside his partner Sarah, an adventurer that is trying to find and save her brother Caesar. By handing the Great Savior the Hero Stone, a stone that can call upon the heroes of the past to help, they explain that the seeds of runes were released from its seal and now has spread across Leophis. It is up to them to stop the seed from sprouting and causing a new age of destruction. In an interview with Famitsu, the game was the idea of Ryuji Odate, a producer at Bandai Namco, that he had been thinking about when Tales of Card Evolve was released. There was a want to bring the series onto smartphone devices as a dedicated application rather than a browser extension. Bandai Namco met with Akatsuki Inc. to talk about a partnership, since the company had experience working on mobile titles, including a few on smartphones in recent times. The meeting went off without a hunch, according to Odate-san, with former Akatsuki Inc. CEO Genki Shiota commenting at the same interview that the meeting with Bandai Namco was a bit scary at first. Bandai Namco wanted a framework that was not only competitive with the market then, but something original that could be easy to play for casual audience, but still have a strategic element towards it. Early concepts tackled the idea of whether or not the game shall be played vertically or horizontally. Here's an image of one of those concepts in landscape perspective, with the idea of real-time strategy incorporated on it. The idea was that the game will be played in semi-auto battles, and you'll be able to select a character, and then select the enemies, and then switch between those enemies during combat, where the advantages would be more attainable. Ultimately, the team went for a portrait perspective to simulate the idea of playing the game with one hand, while eating a sandwich with the other hand. Early prototypes were made to spark ideas on game flow, with some of them moving closer to what the game would look like right now. Since Akatsuki Inc. was maining the part of the development side of the game, they went for a gameplay loop that is oddly similar to another game that they've made. That game being 1000 Memories. And when I mean extremely similar, I mean like downright similar. We'll get into that in just a bit. 1000 Memories was produced a few months prior before Tales of Link. The game was released on November 22, 2013 on iOS, and a month later on Android devices. You'd think a game like this will be only released in the East, however it was localized to the West. Not in Europe, not in US, but in Canada. On August 31st, 2015, by the name of Soul Linker. If the similarities weren't so obvious already. Comparing the two games side by side, you can see similarities are outright the same style when it comes to its UI and battle progression. Some of the same points are how both games involve the player linking their 9 party members to deal damage or to heal, how linking all 9 unleashes an ultimate attack, how setting your party members in specific ways for skills to activate, how equipment is added onto characters, and how friends can be recruited to help out during missions. In the same Famitsu interview, Kazuya Yamamoto, director at Akatsuki Inc., explained that the differences between 1000 Memories and Tales of Link is that Link adds a unique mechanics to give it more of a Tales of feel. One such has to do with the active skills. Active skills are abilities that give the player advantages, but only set to their first 3 party members, the fourth one being the friend recruit. In 1000 Memories, the player is able to use these abilities after a set amount of turns are passed. In Tales of Link, active skills have costs that are tied towards the link counter in the middle of the screen during gameplay. The link counter increases when the player connects the party together. From there, if an active skill's cost is 20 and the bar has 100 link points, then one skill can be used multiple times. Other differences not mentioned in this interview is the Guardian feature in Tales of Link, where added bonuses are included towards the party depending on which units the player has in their party and what units they have in the Guardian sphere. Unlike 1000 Memories, Tales of Link has Mystic Arts, which is the giant staple in Tales of games. Tales of Link's PvP is represented as Duel Fest, an arena-like system where players are put into faction to win the most battle for said faction by defeating other players' 3 first party members. Whereas 1000 Memories have a dedicated PvP mode called God War, where they fight against other players' party to bring their health down to 0. According to Yoshinori Naoi, director and Link scenario writer at Bandai Namco, there were more character illustrations, animation, and text to simulate characters being more lively and cherishable compared to 1000 Memories. Side note, but according to an interview with GameBiz, Bandai Namco's producer Sayaka Miwa and producer Kaname Uichi explains that they used a program called Save Points from a company called Mugen Up. This allowed them to compile the increased amount of illustrations that were commissioned from various production companies before sending them over to developers. This made it easier to see what was completed and what was still in the works, without asking the illustrators about progress reports via email. On top of bringing many characters from other Tales games, Tales of Link adds a whopping 72 original characters on top of their main cast. All of them have small backstories in their descriptions, with some of them having roles in the main plot, and others having roles in side quests. Odate-san was fond of a particular character named Marunrun, who is wearing a mascot costume. Her description states the following: "Shh, the organization mustn't learn it's me inside this costume. I'll give you a time and place. Come alone, and I'll tell you the truth about the Galantine incident." Cryptic, isn't it? However, we never learn about the truth about the Galantine incident, or even experience what a Galantine incident actually is throughout the game's lifespan. In fact, a good chunk of these characters and their backstory never get used for anything other than a little small event during the Tales of Zestiria DX release, and even that doesn't scratch the surface of these characters. It seems that there was hope that the development team will be able to expand on these original characters' lore. You can find unused art of some of these characters, as well as unreleased characters, in the Tales of Link memorial book. Some of these characters made it to the main story, whereas others have been placed into side quests or side skits. That makes 26 out of the 72 characters that have any representation into the game, which is only 28% of them. I personally would have liked it to know more about these characters, such as with Rigite and Natoa, as both of their descriptions referred to each other and could have been a potential side quest for the main party. It's a shame, but unless Tales of Link gets a remake and has a way to incorporate these characters into the game, their description is all we can tell about their lore. Yoshinori Naoi, as stated before, was the scenario writer for Tales of Link. In the November 2013 issue of Tales of magazine, there is actually a feature of the prologue of Tales of Link where Sarah meets Lippy for the first time. He explains in a different interview with Animate Times that when writing the scenario, not only did he have to look at the story from his own perspective, but also if a fan of Tales would enjoy it. He uses Kyle and Riala from Tales of Destiny 2 as an example. At first, he had them separated as it would have been more convenient for the story. However, he felt as though moments would not be properly conveyed unless they were together, and fans would definitely love seeing Kyle and Riala in scenes together. This applied to a lot of the crossover characters, where changing their personality would have fit the story better, but it would have been a disservice to fans. So he would consult the original team on characters' personalities before adding them to the main story. Before, though, characters were supposed to only be represented as heroes of the past, but Odate-san wanted to incorporate them into the story and interact with the main cast as well as the world it deifies. So, a lot of the lines had to be re-recorded and rewritten to fit that direction. In this way, Link felt like a successor to Radiant mythology, where the characters became more connected to the world. Odate-san stated that when they first teased Link to the world on August 28, 2013, a lot of fans thought this was another Radiant mythology game, so there was an expectation that the development team had to live up to. Naoi-san stated in the November 2013 issue of Tales of magazine that the protagonist is the player, adding more credit to the game being close to Radiant mythology. Spoiler alert, skip to this part if you don't want to hear it. I can wait. But this decision does not stay as the story goes on. Eventually, by the third quarter into the first chapter, the player learns about one of the protagonist's name being Alan, a name used as a disguise in the distant past, since Alan was one of Heaven's envoys sent there to save Leophis. It is also learned that the name given to Alan by the player in the beginning is Alan's true heavenly name, which sounds normal at first. However, it gets ridiculous, especially after where Sarah asks Alan which name he prefers, to which he replies the name given to him at the beginning of the story. Ugh. Alan was voiced by Yuki Ono, and later scenes has him with his portrait shown as well as having his own dialogue text rather than his speech being relayed by Sarah or Lippy. I wasn't able to find any information regarding what made them wanted to give Alan a voice or separate him from the player and making him his own character, but one could surmise that it could be from player feedback, or developers wanted to convey a story that gave the protagonist more character rather than him being a blank slate or an extension to the player. Tales of Link was scheduled to release fall of 2013, with anyone that is pre-registered for the game getting Sophie from Tales of Graces as a free unit. However, on October 15, 2013, that date has been pushed forward to spring of 2014 with a new trailer showing more of the game. Then, on March 2014 for iOS, and a month later in the same year on Android, Tales of Link was released in Japan. A year later after that, in July of 2015, Bandai Namco issued a trademark in Europe for Tales of Link, hinting at a global release. Then, on April 2016, Tales of Link was released to the West on iOS and Android. So how was the game received? From what I can gather from the iOS page, the Google Play Store, and the disjointed landscape of 2015 to 2018 internet, aka posting whatever link I can find onto the internet archives and doing advanced searches, the game was received with mixed results. For the positives, Tales of Link was fun in gameplay and a lot of players enjoyed the story. The main cast was totally to die for, and their journey was just so great and so amazing to watch through. I for one love Kana and Zephyr's interactions. Each and every one of them was just so memorable in my head. The first chapter's beginning was a slow burn that got exponentially better by the second and third part towards the ending. The game offers many events during its full run until its closure, and also had a second arc akin to Tales of Grace's Lineage and Legacies, taking place after the events of the first chapter. This arc was not localized overseas, and it was only through fan translations that players were able to experience the second chapter to Tales of Link. Blogger Azorel Turtle has the full translation of the second chapter on their blog. If you would like to read through it yourself while watching it, I highly recommend it because it is a great chapter, and it brings more characterization to Sarah as the chapter greatly focuses on her. Of course, finish watching through Tales of Link Chapter 1 before going to Chapter 2 because context does matter here. The music is memorable, especially during moments of tension, heartbreak, and battle. Though, I will admit that hearing this one theme over and over again will be the bane of my existence for years to come. I get that it's a mobile game and there's some limited space on what kind of music you can have, but damn, this is definitely buried into my skull like a little curse that I'll never leave from. Hey, at least Zeppelin's and Alan's theme is a straight up banger. The menu's UI was mixed for some, as some believed that it was a bit messy and disorganized, believing that some options could have been pulled together into one place. And of course, you can't have complaints about a mobile game without commenting on its gotcha mechanics. According to some, getting 5-star units was very low, even if you spent money on the game. Because of this, tackling story events were difficult unless you get partnered with a high-level friend, or you kept trying at getting those stronger units. This level of difficulty made it harder to get abilities like Mystic Arts, which were tied to an item called Art Souls, and Art Souls needed to be collected, just like equipment and characters would. And another thing that wasn't uncommon to Link were glitches and errors. These glitches can be either verification errors, crashes, or connection errors. Despite its flaws, in my opinion, I would say that Tales of Link went beyond what crossover games did before by bringing a compelling story and focusing on its original cast rather than making the game based solely on past Tales characters. It was a good balance where you can get other characters for fan service and to move the needle a little bit in the story, but they don't outshine the main cast and what makes them unique. I found myself enjoying the interaction between the main protagonist and the rest of the party members, rather than the interaction between familiar faces. Once the closure was announced for Tales of Link, some speculate on the reasoning as to why. One reason could be the lack of revenue from Link, and the increased focus on other mobile titles in Bandai Namco's repertoire. Given the fact that Bandai Namco not only had Tales of the Rays and Asteria, both two games that have already shut down, but a bunch of anime mobile titles released during that time such as Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle, One Piece Treasure Cruiser, and Sword Art Online Integral Factor. 3 games that still are running to this day. It wouldn't surprise me if Bandai Namco decided that Link isn't as profitable, or the idea of having this many mobile games going on at once was not giving them the financial quota they were hoping for. Another theory talks about the licensing of Akatsuki's game engine expiring and Bandai Namco deciding not to renew it. Since we have established that Tales of Link and Thousand Memories run on the same game engine, there may have been some sort of an agreement to license this game engine for Tales of Link. A year later, after Tales of Link's closure, Thousand Memories had their own EOS on May 31st, 2019, so maybe Akatsuki Inc. were already planning to end support for a lot of their mobile titles, including this engine. But who really knows, really? Nevertheless, people look fondly to Tales of Link. After its closure on May 28, 2018, An art book showing off some of the game's assets was released in September of the same year, and Bandai Namco's own Tales of the Rays was able to have the story of Link be watchable within the game itself. On top of that, the protagonists Sarah, Lippy, Kana, and Zephyr were brought to Rays as playable characters with their own event skits. They were also brought as playable units to Asteria too. To this day, some hope that one day Tales of Link will make some sort of return. Possibly as a remake of some sort. I think it would be cool to see Link be the first time in a while that a Tales crossover game was brought back to consoles. Or, as not as a crossover game, then maybe an original game with just a main cast and potentially incorporating the rest of the original characters made for the game? Only time will tell whether this entry in the Tales series will ever link back into our hearts.